And since this knight is attacked, so that's why knight to b7 by Lasker. And you can see white has been successful in messing up black pawns. And this knight on b7 looks pretty awkward. Pillsbury has a nice lead in development while Lasker is banking on those two bishops. Okay, so now bishop to b2, and to improve this pawn structure, here Lasker goes for d5, and basically he is hoping for n percent. And simply Pillsbury captures, and Lasker recaptures with the c pawn. And you can see now black regains his pawn structure back. Okay, so now basically Pillsbury develops his another knight on d2, and here it's better for black to just bring this rook on e8 so that he can take control over the e file. But instead he goes for bishop to f6, and guys, that's an inaccuracy, because as you can see black has the bishop pair, which is going to give a big advantage to black in the future. But after the trade, it's not so easy for black to deal with the white knight. And now basically Pillsbury happily exchanges the bishop with bishop takes f6, queen takes f6, and guys, now white can continue this. And basically now there is a move which white can go for, is knight to e4, attacking the queen. And let's suppose if this queen goes to f4, but now comes rook at f goes to e1. Basically we are just supporting the knight. And if black tries to pin the knight by, let's suppose, bishop to g4, simply knight at e goes to d2. And we are basically adding another defense to our knight. And if knight to c5, h3, attacking the bishop, bishop takes f3, knight takes f3. And if black tries to take the center by d5, hoping that now everything is fine, but what about c4? And in the next move, you can see this another rook is going to join the party, and clearly you can see this position will be slightly better for white due to this bad pawn structure. Okay, so in the actual game, after the move queen takes f6, here Pillsbury goes for rook at f goes to e1. Maybe now he is preparing for knight to e4. So to stop this, knight to c5. And now b4 might be the best option for white, so that he can kick this knight back. But Pillsbury, however, goes for knight to e4, and he's now basically targeting the queen. And guys, that's a very clever strategy by Pillsbury. He basically wants to get rid of that powerful knight, and is also successful in bringing the queen into this amazing central post. At the same time, he leaves most of the black pieces either on its original square or on the bad squares. And all these small details are going to help him in the end game. And since this pawn is attacked, so that's why he defends with the bishop. And after that, c4. Basically, Pillsbury goes right after the heart of black pawn chain. He wants to blow the center, open up for his rooks, while black is you can see black queen is still stuck on f6, not doing anything great. So that's why here Lasker tries to attack the queen, and you can see there are only two good squares left for the queen, because obviously bringing this queen back to either c2 or b1 makes no sense, because you are basically undeveloping your queen. So let's suppose if this queen goes to let's suppose on d3, now comes c5, covering the d4 square so that white pieces can't enter, but white can enter to d5, which is a great outpost, but at 6. Okay, and if knight to d2, preparing for the same move, knight to e4, simply bishop to f5, and clearly you can see this game will end in a draw. But after rook at f goes to e8, Pillsbury wants a huge fight, so that's why he goes for queen to d4. He offers a queen trade, and the point behind this is if Lasker decides to exchange the queen with queen takes d4, now comes knight takes d4, rook takes e1 check, rook takes e1, and you can see we are heading towards the end game where white knight is better than Lasker bishop. Why I am saying this? Because let's suppose if this game continues like c5, attacking the knight, but white can simply counter this with rook to e7, attacking the bishop, and if rook to d8, if he tries to defend, just knight to b5, attacking both pawns. And guys, that's a very good move. The idea is after bishop takes, let's suppose b5, c takes b5, and if black thinks that he has successfully compromised the pawn structure, but guys, in reality this is completely winning for white, because if let's suppose black tries to attack the pawn by rook to b8, simply rook takes a7, and you cannot capture this pawn on b5 due to this spank rank mate. So that's why firstly you have to go for h5, but simply a4, and you can see white now has two passed pawn on the queen side which cannot be stopped by the black rook. So that's why after queen to d4, let me go back. So that's why here Lasker decides to exchange the rook first. And uh, he basically does this so that he can simplify the position. And as I said, he tries to just simplify the position much as possible. And finally, we reach into a pure minor piece ending, where white has a knight and black has a bishop. Material is equal, but look at the pawn structure. Black has an isolated pawn on a7, while white pawn structure are two nice compact groups. And this structural advantage is going to be a long-term problem for black. Okay, so now rook to e8. Here Lasker offers a rook trade, and here it would be better for white to just slide this rook on d1. And basically the idea behind this is with the idea of knight to f3, so that he can exchange the pawn. I mean he can target the pawn on d6. But after rook to e8, here Pillsbury decides to exchange the rooks, and that's an inaccuracy. Here the engine is preferring the engine is preferring to keep the rooks on to add more pressure on the black isolated pawns. But Pillsbury wants a huge knight versus bishop endgame, which is also a reasonable winning try. And as you can see, both kings are centralizing. This is the classic endgame, and basically we all know that this is a classic endgame technique. Black king is active, but you can see white's king is better placed to support the queenside pawns. And here you can see black is now successful in bringing the king to c5, and now he is ready to push d5. But guys, here Pillsbury goes according to his plan. He finds the best move f5. He start gambling, he start grabbing space on the king side, and also, completely cutting this bishop off from the board. So that's why g6. But he simply locks the king side with f6. Now the game will be decided on the queen side, so that's why here Lasker goes for a d5. He simply attacks the c4 pawn. And at the end, Lasker successfully grabs the pawn on f6. But in doing so, his king has been drawn anyway. Basically his king is drawn away from the queen side. And that's what Pillsbury wants. He immediately jumps his knight to c4, targeting the a5 pawn. Okay, so after knight takes a5, I have a question for you. What will you play as of black? Here, the best move for black is to go for king to g5, trying to get closer to the pawn. And let's suppose if, this game continues like king to d4, king to f4, knight to c4, king to g3. And you can see black is getting closer towards the g2 pawn, knight to b6. And if he tries to, attack the bishop, and guys, now I just want you all to pause the video and try to guess the next move which black can play in this position. And in this position, black can go for this amazing move, bishop to g4, sacrificing the bishop. And here the best move for white is to, push this a pawn further, trying to promote. Because if he decides to capture the bishop with h takes g4, now comes king takes g2, and you can see now no one can stop this pawn from promotion. I mean, let's suppose if white tries to push his pawn further with the same idea of promotion, h3, a6, h2, a7, h1 equal to queen, a8 equal to queen. But now comes this check, which is queen to g1, king to e5, queen takes b6, and also both sides have a queen. But as you can see, white has two connected pawns on the king side, whereas you can see black has two isolated pawns, and which clearly makes this position better for white. Okay, so let me go back to the move, which is, so where are we? Bishop to g4. As I said, the best move for white is to, push this a pawn further. So let us see what will happen if, instead of capturing the, bishop, which we already see, what will happen if white decides to, push the pawn further. If this happens, now comes bishop to e2, covering the e6 square so that this pawn can't be pushed further. And also in the next move, black is going to capture on g2. So to tackle this, the only best move for white is to go for knight to c4, blocking the path of this bishop. And let's suppose if black decides to capture on g2, hoping that now everything is safe, but simply king to c5. Black is simply going to, support this a pawn. And if bishop to g4, hoping with the same idea of, covering this square so that white can't push. And if white captured, then, black is going to push. But but before that, simply knight to d6. White is going to simply cover the square so that this bishop can't enter. And if bishop goes back to e2 again, so that he can cover this square, so that this pawn can't be pushed, but simply knight to c4 again. And if bishop to g4, now white can capture on g4. And yes, because if h3, a6, h2, a7, h1 equal to queen, a8 equal to queen. And if queen to g1 check, king takes c6, and clearly you can see white is now a knight up, and that's completely winning. So what's the best move here? And guys, now what I'm about to show you will definitely blow your head. This is the part, I mean, this is the most beautiful part which I was talking about. So the question is, what is the best move after knight to c4? Okay, so let me go back. Yes, so in this position, the question which comes in our mind, that what's the best move? Because if black tries to capture on g2, then it's losing for black, and also you can see white is very close to promotion. So how can black deal with all of this? And guys, this is the only move which can save the game for black. If you want to try, just pause the video, but I don't think it's so easy. So the move is to give a check by c5. And yes, I know this might be surprising for you, because at the first look it literally makes no sense. Black is just giving up a straight pawn, but it has a deeper plan. The idea is, after king takes c5, and what's next? After king takes g2, a6, okay, king takes h3, a7. And guys, since this pawn is now close to promotion, simply bishop to f3, covering the a8 square so that white can't push the pawn further. And I know some of you might be still confused that what's going on here. Guys, the main idea behind all of this is to open the h1 and a8 diagonal, because earlier let me go back, because because as you can see, in this position the pawn on c6 was actually blocking the path of his own bishop. So by pushing the pawn further, black opens the diagonal, and which basically stops this pawn from promotion. And now let's suppose if this game continues like knight to a5, with the idea of knight to c6 blocking the route of this bishop, but simply bishop to a8. And if b4, king to g4, b5, h3, b6, h2, b7, bishop takes b7, knight takes b7, and h1 equal to queen, a8 equal to queen. And clearly you can see this position is completely equal, because black is now and yes, basically and yeah, you can see black has 2 pawns again a knight, and you can see this is just amazing. Okay, so in the actual game, after the move knight takes a5, let me go back. So here Lasker goes for king to e5, which is a serious mistake. He brings his knight into the center, but it just become a target for knight, and Pillsbury simply gives a check from c4 square. And now he goes for knight to b6, attacking the bishop and threatening to invade on d5. And here bishop to f5, and basically now to win this game, white has to just push the a pawn, but instead he make a mistake with king to d4. And here black now must consider the move g5, trying to create immediate counterplay on the king side. And let's suppose if white goes according to his plan, which is a5. Now guys, again pause the video and try to guess the next move which white can play in this position. And guys, the move is to sacrifice the bishop with bishop takes h3. The idea is, after g takes h3, g4, a6, g3, a7, g2, a8 equal to queen, g1 equal to queen. And now black is the one who promotes a queen with a check. And after queen to d3, simply queen takes b6, and clearly you can see this game is now equal, because yes, despite of being a pawn up, black pawn structure is also completely shattered. Okay, so after king to d4, here Lasker missed this move and he goes for bishop to e4. He tries to attack the pawn on g2, but there is a problem. And the problem is that now Pillsbury just advances his a pawn further. And yes, basically Lasker tries to give a check, which also opens the diagonal so that he can stop. But simply king takes c5, bishop takes g2. And yes, he wins a pawn, but it's too late. And now you can see this a pawn is a monster. And guys, that's a beautiful move. And you can see he's also blocking the diagonal of this bishop. And in this position, the final move by Pillsbury is knight to d5, and here Emanuel Lasker resigned, because clearly you can see there is no way for black to stop this pawn from promotion, since this h1 to a8 diagonal is already blocked by the knight. What a game, guys, what a game. And this might be one of the best endgames in chess history. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like it. I will see you in the next one. This is your host Bison signing off. Bye bye.